You need to know how to be alone and not be defined by another person. These are the words of Oscar Wilde, the late poet and author. And he reflects in those words something that humankind through the centuries has always looked for: independence. This idea of independence. We see it go right back to the very beginning of humanity. This idea that we want to be financially independent, we want to be socially and emotionally independent, we want to be physically independent. We don't like the idea that we might need something or someone. And so we venerate this idea of independence and so strongly link it to the idea of human success today. On the flip side, the correlation, of course, is that we have stigmatized dependence. And while dependence is now correlated with weakness and need and struggle, independence is correlated with strength and self-sufficiency and resilience. We see it right back at the beginning of the Bible. In the very first book, in Genesis, there is a society of people who famously said, "Come, let us build for ourselves a city with a tower in it that has a top that reaches to the heavens, and we will make a name for ourselves." It's the idea of independence that runs right through that statement and parallels with what Oscar Wilde said just less than half a century ago. Interestingly though, in the last few months, our notions of independence have been revealed to be illusions of independence, both collectively and individually. Humankind has been dealt some severe reality checks in relation to what we thought was our march towards greater individual and collective independence. And it's happened both practically and philosophically. Practically, because the systems and institutions on which we have sought to build our independence have come grinding to a halt. Whether it's our economic and financial systems, or our geographic and people movement physical systems. Philosophically, we see the illusion of independence revealed because we see that people who claim to be, for example, financially independent, that's all well and good. But all it means is that if we build our identity on that, then we become dependent on the concept of financial independence. Some of us might claim to be emotionally independent, and that's all well and good. But if we build our identity on the concept of being emotionally independent, then we're just dependent on that idea. And so sooner or later, when these things come crashing down, as they always do, because of the brokenness of the world that we've seen so obviously in the last 3 months, and the brokenness of ourselves that we see if we're honest with what's inside of us, then we have nothing left to depend on. So whichever way we look at it, we are all dependent. We're all dependent on something or someone. The only question is, on whom or on what do we place our dependence? That's the only question left. The problem is, at a time like this, we're often left wondering, what is there left to depend on? And it's into that question that the person of Jesus Christ comes, with the most amazing message of relational, up-close and personal rescue that offers us a countercultural vision and a countercultural conception of independence. Not independence that tries to shrug off the need for anything, but independence that is honest and has the strength of conviction and courage to recognize our need, to recognize our fundamental dependence, but to put that in the person of Jesus Christ. This God who came into the world as a person, went to a cross, took on all of our brokenness and our struggle, so that we could then be in loving relationship with Him, and so that we could live lives of empowerment and independence, knowing that ultimately we are fundamentally dependent on Him for our deepest existential needs. Unlike Oscar Wilde, we know the truth. Oscar Wilde said that we don't want to be defined by another person. That's true, but only insofar as you're defined by the wrong person. Whereas if you know the person of Jesus Christ, that's the right kind of person to be defined by. We see it later in the Old Testament where King David, this great military ruler, he pours out his heart in this psalm of dependence, Psalm 20. In a moment of suffering, he talks about his declaration of dependence, not just of himself, but of all of humankind. And he finishes with this beautiful flourish where he says, some put their trust in horses, some put their trust in chariots. We put our trust in the name of the Lord our God. His name is Jesus Christ, friends, and we can depend on Him. The words faith and trust in the Bible have strong correlations with this idea of leaning on something or putting your weight or the wholeness of who you are and your dependence on something. And that something, that someone, is the person of Jesus Christ. Thankfully, there are two realities that we don't need to run away from, but two realities that are undeniable. The fact that you and I, and all of us, are infinitely dependent, but the fact and the reality that Jesus Christ is infinitely dependable. Thanks again for joining me. God bless you, and I'll see you again soon.